The sky above Earth had never looked more ominous. For weeks, strange lights appeared in the night sky, visible only by those who had the sharpest eyes. A deep hum, like the growl of a distant thunderstorm, filled the air. People across the planet began to worry, and rumors of alien ships spread like wildfire. No one knew what to expect, but the tension was unbearable. Governments scrambled, prepared for something they couldn't fully understand. The day had come, and humanity was about to face something it had never imagined. In the sky, above Earth's atmosphere, a massive fleet of ships appeared. The ships were enormous, each one the size of a small city, and they moved as if they had been waiting for this moment. There were hundreds of them, each one perfectly aligned, as though they had planned their arrival for years. The ships weren't like anything humanity had ever seen. Their smooth metallic surfaces reflected the sunlight in strange patterns, making them appear both beautiful and terrifying. They were sleek, elegant, and seemed to hum with an energy that made Earth's defenses look insignificant in comparison. A deep silence filled the planet below, as people all over the world stopped whatever they were doing, staring up at the sky. News stations across the globe broadcasted live footage of the event. The fear in the eyes of the reporters was clear as they spoke in hushed tones. "This is not a drill," one of them whispered. "The Galactic Council has arrived." The Galactic Council was an ancient group known across the stars for their wisdom and power. They controlled vast stretches of the galaxy and had met with many civilizations in their time. However, they were not known for their kindness. The Council had a reputation for conquering planets, taking what they wanted, and leaving nothing behind. The people of Earth had heard rumors, but they never thought it would be their turn. As the ships loomed in the sky, a single, smaller vessel descended slowly toward Earth. It landed gently on the outskirts of a major city. This ship, unlike the others, was different. It was not built for war. It was built for diplomacy. The message was clear. The Galactic Council had arrived, and they wanted to talk. From the ship, a figure emerged, tall, with dark robes that shimmered as if they were made of the night sky itself. The figure stood in front of the crowd. Their presence was powerful, overwhelming, and yet oddly graceful. This was the Diplomat, the one sent to speak on behalf of the Galactic Council. Zorath, the high-ranking delegate of the Empire, stepped forward with a calm, commanding presence. The people of Earth watched in silence as Zorath spoke for the first time. His voice echoed across the city. "People of Earth," he began, his tone cold yet clear. "I am Zorath of the Galactic Council. We have come to your world with a singular purpose: to bring you under our rule." The words hit like a wave crashing against the shore. People could barely comprehend what they were hearing. Under our rule. One person muttered in disbelief. "They want to conquer us." Zorath continued, unaffected by the crowd's shock. "We are the rulers of countless star systems. You are but a small world in the vastness of the galaxy. Your primitive technology has no chance against the might of our empire. We offer you peace, but only under our command. If you resist, the consequences will be dire." The people stood frozen. Fear ran through their veins. Earth had never faced a threat like this before. Their military was strong, but what could they do against a fleet like that? Their strongest weapons were nothing compared to the power the Galactic Council had displayed in mere minutes. Zorath raised a hand, and a screen appeared above him, showing images of Earth's cities and landscapes. The screen zoomed in on military installations and key locations. "We have already studied your planet," Zorath said. "Your governments, your defenses, your people. We know everything. Resistance is futile." The diplomat's words were sharp and calculated, like a blade cutting through the air. There was no room for debate, no offer for negotiation. Earth's fate seemed sealed. But despite the fear that gripped the people, there was something else, something that wasn't there before. A spark, a realization. The people of Earth were not as helpless as Zorath believed. They had their strength, their unity, their creativity. They had something that no empire could calculate, something that Zoreth had not anticipated. In the crowd, a woman stepped forward, her eyes burning with determination. She was not a soldier, not a politician, just an ordinary citizen. She had no power, no army behind her, but she had a voice. "You underestimate us," she shouted, her voice cutting through the silence. "You think you can conquer us because we don't have your technology. But you don't know who we are. You don't know humanity." Zoreth's gaze shifted to the woman. For a moment, there was silence. He studied her, his face unreadable. "You believe you can stand against the Galactic Council?" he asked, his tone flat. The woman didn't flinch. "We will fight for our world. We may not have your weapons, but we have something stronger, our will to survive." A murmur rippled through the crowd, growing louder. People began to realize the truth. Earth had something no empire could take away. Humanity had heart, determination, and the strength to rise up. And for the first time, Zoreth wasn't sure if the Galactic Council had truly calculated all the variables. The air was thick with tension, and Zoreth could feel it. He had expected submission, fear, and obedience. But instead, he was seeing something he had never anticipated. Resistance, not just from the military, but from every single person on Earth. A realization began to form in his mind. Perhaps Earth was not as weak as he had thought. As he turned back to face the massive fleet, he felt the weight of his mission. The Empire might have sent him to conquer, but something in his mind began to question whether this would be a simple victory. Could Earth really stand against the might of the Galactic Council? The question lingered in the air as Zoreth prepared for the next phase of his mission. The fate of Earth was no longer certain. The arrival of the Galactic Council had set the stage for a battle no one had expected. Would humanity submit to the will of the Empire, or would they rise to defend their planet? Only time would tell. The cold wind swept through the city as Zoreth stood before the crowd, the reality of what he had just proposed settling like a heavy weight in the air. The people of Earth had not fallen to their knees in fear, as he had expected. Instead, they stood tall, eyes filled with defiance, and that worried him. He turned and stepped back into his ship, his mind racing. The voices of Earth's leaders filled his ears, each one a reminder of the task at hand. He had been sent to conquer Earth, to bring this planet under the rule of the Galactic Council. But the people he had just encountered, they weren't like the others. They had something deeper, something unyielding. And it was making him question everything. Inside the ship, Zoreth's crew waited. His second-in-command, Oryx, stood nearby, watching him carefully. The first contact was unexpected, Oryx said, his voice low. "You were not expecting them to fight back so fiercely, were you?" Zoreth didn't answer right away. He stared out at the Earth below, the blue planet that had once seemed so insignificant. It was nothing like the records had described. The people were resilient, their voices filled with anger and courage. They were not the weak, helpless species he had been told about. "They have something," Zoreth muttered to himself. "Something we didn't account for." Oryx looked at him with a mix of concern and confusion. "You're questioning the mission, Zoreth?" he asked, a slight edge in his tone. "We have our orders. Earth must fall." Zoreth turned to face Oryx. There was a coldness in his eyes, but it wasn't directed at Oryx. It was directed inward, as if he was trying to push aside a growing doubt. "I'm not sure anymore. Their resistance, it's different from anything we've encountered before. I thought their military would crumble before our ships, but their people, they're not afraid. They have something we don't understand." Oryx took a step forward, his eyes narrowing. "Are you suggesting we retreat? That we abandon our mission because a few humans have shown bravery?" Zoreth clenched his fists, feeling the weight of the decision on his shoulders. The pressure from the Galactic Council was immense. They were expecting results, and Earth was not a small target. If he failed, it could mean the end of his career, or worse. But he couldn't ignore what he had seen on the ground. The humans weren't like the others. They had heart. and that made them dangerous. Not retreat, Zoreth replied, his voice firm, though his mind was still clouded. But we need to reconsider our strategy. I need more time. If we're going to succeed, we have to understand how they think. Time is something you do not have, Oryx countered sharply. The Empire expects us to act swiftly. We cannot waste time analyzing their weaknesses. We strike when the opportunity is right. Zoreth turned to the star map projected in front of him, his fingers running through the data on Earth's defenses. But as he scrolled through the intelligence reports, something nagged at him, a feeling he couldn't shake. The reports showed the humans had limited technology compared to the Empire, but their creativity and determination were unparalleled. Earth's forces had already begun to organize, and their resistance was more than just military might. It was a fight for survival. He knew that when a species fought for their very existence, they would fight harder than any empire could anticipate. What if they surprise us again? Zoreth asked, his voice softer this time. What if they find a way to turn our own strength against us? Oryx scoffed. You're letting fear cloud your judgment. The Galactic Empire is unstoppable. We have the might to crush them. And you are forgetting one thing. Zoreth. What's that? Zoreth asked, his eyes still fixed on the map. They are nothing compared to the power of the Council, Oryx said with conviction. The Council has destroyed entire civilizations. Earth's resistance is a fleeting spark. Once we unleash the full force of the fleet, nothing will stop us. Zoreth took a deep breath, his mind torn between duty and his growing doubts. He couldn't deny the power of the Galactic Empire. But there was something about Earth, something raw and untapped, that made him hesitate. The fire in the eyes of the humans he had seen on the ground lingered in his mind. He knew that if Earth's leaders could rally their people to fight, the Empire could face something much worse than a quick conquest. They could face a war. The silence in the ship grew heavy as Zoreth considered his next move. He had been trained to follow orders, to execute the will of the Galactic Council without question. But now he wasn't sure if he could. Could he truly bring the full might of the Empire down on a planet that was willing to fight back with everything it had? We need to send a message to the Council, Zoreth said suddenly. His voice was calm, but there was a fire in his eyes now. I need their permission to shift our strategy. If we continue down this path, we may lose more than just the battle. We could lose everything. Oryx stepped back, his expression unreadable. You intend to go against the Council's wishes. Zoreth met Oryx's gaze, his eyes hardening. I intend to survive. And if that means questioning the orders I've been given, then so be it. The air in the ship seemed to freeze, and for a moment, Zoreth wondered if he had made a grave mistake. But deep down, he knew this was the only way. If Earth had any chance at all, he had to give them a fighting chance. The question now was whether the Galactic Council would allow it, or if they would see Zoreth's actions as an act of betrayal. As Zoreth sent the transmission, he glanced one last time at the Earth below. The fate of the planet hung in the balance, and Zoreth knew the decision he was about to make would change everything. Would humanity rise to the challenge, or would they be crushed under the weight of an empire that thought they were just another world to conquer? The clock was ticking, and Zoreth had just crossed a line. There was no turning back now. Zoreth stood at the center of the ship's command room, the hum of the engines around him, as he stared at the flickering screen before him. The message had been sent to the Galactic Council, but now he had to wait. The weight of his decision settled over him like a storm cloud. He had questioned the orders, defied the expectation of an easy conquest. He had given Earth a chance to survive. As the minutes passed, a quiet tension built in the room. His second-in-command, Oryx, paced nearby, his eyes constantly shifting between the screens showing Earth's various military movements and the glowing map of their fleet above them. Do you think they will listen to you? Oryx asked, his voice tight with skepticism. I hope they will, Zoreth answered quietly, though his mind was far from certain. But even if they don't, I have made my choice. Oryx gave him a sharp look, but said nothing. Instead, he continued his task of monitoring Earth's movements. The silence that followed was filled with the quiet beeping of various systems and the soft buzz of communication channels. Zorath had always known that his life, his career, was dictated by the will of the Galactic Council. But never before had he felt so conflicted. The people of Earth had shown something different. A spark, a determination that made Zorath question the entire mission. Could they really be defeated? And if they couldn't be, what would that mean for the Empire? The transmission arrived suddenly, breaking Zorath from his thoughts. A direct message from the Galactic Council. It was time. His heart raced as he opened the message, his eyes scanning the words. The Council's response was clear and cold. Zorath, your hesitation is unacceptable. You were sent to subdue Earth, not to question your orders. We have authorized the use of full force. Proceed immediately with the invasion. If you fail to carry out your duties, consequences will follow. Zorath's grip on the console tightened. He could feel his pulse quicken. The Council had given him no room for compromise, no understanding of the uncertainty he had felt. The words were an ultimatum. They demanded obedience. The weight of the decision crushed down on him. He had been tasked with conquering Earth, an order that now felt more like a sentence of death. Oryx stepped closer, peering over his shoulder at the message. They've made their position clear, he said. There's no going back now. The Empire expects results. Zorath stood motionless, his mind in turmoil. The decision he had made was clear, yet the consequences of defying the Council were dire. The fear of punishment, the loss of his position, perhaps even his life, lingered in the back of his mind. But the image of Earth's people, of their courage and fire, stayed with him. Could he really carry out the destruction of this world? Could he watch as millions were wiped out simply because the Council wanted to extend their dominion? He felt a burning in his chest, a deep struggle between the loyalty he had sworn to the Council and the humanity he was starting to see in Earth's people. I can't, he whispered to himself. Oryx's sharp voice broke the silence. What do you mean I can't? We have no choice, Zorath. If you hesitate now, you'll never be allowed to return to the Empire. Do you really want to be a traitor? Zorath felt the pressure building inside him. His thoughts collided, each one more urgent than the last. But there was no turning back. The Council had spoken, and to refuse their orders would mean the end of his career, and quite possibly his life. Zorath, Oryx said again, his voice rising slightly, we have no room for mistakes. The Empire does not forgive. Zorath inhaled deeply, looking once more at the images of Earth. He saw the faces of the people, each one filled with determination, even fear. They weren't giving up. They were ready to fight. And for a moment, Zorath could almost feel the pulse of their resolve, something he had never felt from any other species. Could they truly stand against the might of the Galactic Council? He looked back at the transmission from the Council. Their words hung in the air like a curse. Proceed immediately with the invasion. Oryx's voice brought him back to reality. We'll be ready, Zorath. The fleet is already moving. There is no time for hesitation. The guilt, the doubt, the fear, all of it swirled within him, but it was clear. The Empire was relentless. If he didn't act now, the full force of the Council would descend on Earth, and there would be no turning back. He had been chosen to lead this conquest. If he faltered, if he let this opportunity slip through his fingers, everything he had worked for would crumble. I have to do it, Zorath said at last, his voice resigned, his eyes focused on the fleet below. Oryx looked at him, his expression hard but approving. Good. We'll follow through. The Empire will not fail. Zorath closed his eyes for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing on him. He had no choice but to obey. The people of Earth, with their defiance and fire, would face the might of the Galactic Council. It would be an overwhelming force, one that could not be stopped. But there was still a nagging feeling in the back of Zorath's mind. What if Earth wasn't as weak as the Council believed? What if humanity had the strength to survive, to outlast the Empire's might? What if this battle, this invasion, wasn't going to be as easy as everyone assumed? As he looked out the window at the approaching fleet, Zorath knew one thing for certain. This mission was far from over. And as the lights of Earth glistened below, he couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, the humans would surprise him once again. The stage was set, and the battle for Earth was about to begin. But what would happen next was something even Zorath couldn't predict. The darkness of space seemed endless, yet it was nothing compared to the turmoil swirling inside Zorath. The fleet loomed like a vast shadow overhead, a reminder of the destruction they were about to unleash on Earth. His orders were clear: invade, conquer, and leave no room for resistance. The human species was to be eradicated, their fate sealed by the will of the Galactic Empire. But Zorath couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that what he was about to do would change everything. Zorath sat at the command center of the flagship, the tension in the air so thick that it felt like it was choking him. His crew moved swiftly, preparing for the final phase of the invasion, while Oryx stood nearby, silent as always, his eyes fixed on the unfolding situation. The fleet was ready, the weapons primed. Yet, Zorath knew the humans weren't like any species they had encountered before. He could see their resolve, their unity, their will to fight. It wasn't just about survival for them. It was about something deeper, something that Zorath couldn't quite understand, but he couldn't ignore either. "We're nearing the atmosphere, sir," Oryx said, his voice cutting through Zorath's thoughts. Zorath glanced at the screen, where Earth appeared in all its breathtaking glory. It was beautiful, so full of life. His hand hovered over the command panel, ready to give the signal to begin the assault. But something in his gut told him to wait. What if the humans had a plan? What if they weren't as helpless as they appeared? "We should have destroyed their satellites by now," Zorath muttered to himself, staring at the approaching planet. He knew the humans were expecting an attack. They had already mobilized their military, fortifying key locations and preparing for the inevitable assault. But even their preparations seemed primitive compared to the overwhelming might of the Galactic fleet. "We've underestimated them, Zorath," Oryx said quietly, almost as though reading his thoughts. "They've done the impossible before. They've survived against impossible odds. If we give them time, they may surprise us once again." Zorath looked at his second-in-command, his gaze sharp. "You're telling me we should hesitate?" Oryx didn't answer right away, but his silence spoke volumes. The decision weighed heavily on him, too. He had seen the fire in Zorath's eyes, the conflict in his soul. The mission was simple: destroy Earth and claim victory. But it wasn't as easy as it seemed. Zorath had seen Earth's resistance. He had felt the strength of their spirit. And the closer they got to the planet, the more he realized that victory might not come as easily as they had thought. "We need to prepare for the worst," Zorath said, his voice firm now. "We've seen their strength. They won't surrender without a fight." Oryx gave him a curt nod. "Understood, sir." As the fleet descended through the atmosphere, the ships became visible to Earth's forces. Zorath could almost feel the tension in the air as the humans braced for impact. A storm of activity erupted as Earth's military systems activated, sending out waves of defense signals, launching interceptors, and preparing for battle. Zorath watched as missiles streaked through the sky, heading straight for his fleet. His heart raced, and his instincts screamed for him to take immediate action. "Brace for impact," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos of the command center. The fleet's shields flared as the missiles collided, detonating with an immense force. The ship rocked, but the shields held firm. Zorath's hand tightened around the armrest of his chair. The humans weren't retreating. They were fighting. The attack was more coordinated than anything they had expected. It was a clear sign that Earth had prepared for this moment, for the invasion that was now unfolding before their eyes. "Return fire," Zorath commanded, his voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through his veins. The flagship's weapons systems hummed to life, unleashing a barrage of laser fire at the incoming human craft. Ships exploded in midair, but more kept coming. Earth's forces were not backing down. In the chaos of battle, Zorath's mind raced. This was no longer just a conquest. It was a fight for survival. And as he watched the battle unfold, he felt the weight of his choices pressing down on him. Earth's defenses were formidable. Their military might had proven to be more than a match for the first wave of the Galactic fleet. Zorath could see the resolve in the humans' eyes, even from space. They weren't just defending their world. They were fighting for their future, for their very existence. A transmission from Earth's Central Command popped up on Zorath's screen. He immediately opened the channel. The face of a human commander appeared, his face etched with determination. "Zorath, is it?" The commander said, his voice steady. "We won't surrender. Not to you, not to anyone. If you want to take Earth, you'll have to destroy us all." Zorath stared at the screen, his thoughts frozen for a moment. The defiance in the human commander's voice was unlike anything he had ever encountered. He had expected fear. He had expected panic. But what he saw in the commander's eyes was a fiery determination, a resolve to fight to the very end. "Your people are brave," Zorath replied, his voice surprisingly calm. "But your bravery won't be enough. You're outmatched. Surrender now, and we'll spare your cities." The commander's laugh was cold and unwavering. "We'll see about that." The transmission ended abruptly, but Zorath could feel the challenge in the commander's words. There was no negotiation here, no surrender. The battle had only just begun. "Prepare for a full-scale invasion," Zorath ordered, his voice hardening. "We take Earth, or we die trying." Oryx nodded, his eyes filled with resolve. "Yes, sir." The fight for Earth was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. And as Zorath watched the human forces scramble to defend their world, he knew that this would be a battle unlike any other. The humans had something the Galactic Empire had never seen before, something that could turn the tide of this conflict. And Zorath was about to find out just how powerful the will to survive could truly be. The battle raged on above Earth. The Galactic fleet, with its overwhelming power, clashed with the determined resistance of humanity's forces. Zorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as the human military unleashed wave after wave of resistance. His fleet had already taken considerable damage, yet the humans refused to yield. He couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at their resilience. They weren't backing down, and they weren't showing any signs of fear. "Shields at 60%, sir," Oryx reported from the operations panel, his voice strained. "We've taken more hits than anticipated." Zorath gripped the armrests of his command chair. His mind raced as he studied the battlefield unfolding before him. The humans had deployed advanced fighter crafts, missiles, and defense systems that far exceeded what the Empire had expected. It was as if they had prepared for this moment for years. He glanced at the Earth's surface through the ship's massive windows. The atmosphere shimmered with the flare of explosions and the brilliant trails of laser fire. Below, cities burned, but humanity fought with everything they had. They weren't just defending their planet. They were defending their way of life. And the more Zorath watched, the more he realized how deeply this fight was about something greater than mere survival. It was about the freedom to live as they wished. "Retreating?" Oryx asked with a sarcastic chuckle, seeing the growing damage to their fleet. Zorath's eyes flickered to him, knowing that there were no easy answers. Earth's defenses were unlike anything they had faced before. "We have no intention of retreating," Zorath replied, his voice tinged with something akin to regret. "But we need to adapt our strategy. We've underestimated them." The silence in the command room was heavy. Oryx didn't speak again, but Zorath could see the tension in his expression. The loyalty of his crew was unquestionable, but the gravity of the situation had made even the most seasoned officers nervous. A sudden flash of light caught Zorath's attention. His eyes widened as the human forces unleashed their secret weapon. Massive plasma cannons mounted on the surface of Earth. The energy surged into space, and the blast sent shockwaves throughout Zoreth's flagship. His ship rocked violently as the plasma charged through the hull, weakening its shields. "We're taking critical damage," Oryx shouted, trying to stabilize the ship's systems. "Their weapons are far stronger than we predicted." Zoreth's mind raced. The plasma cannon was unlike anything he had seen before. It was powerful enough to rip through the toughest shields and send waves of destruction to the heart of the fleet. The Empire had underestimated Earth in every way. Their weaponry wasn't just advanced. It was fueled by a kind of determination that was incomprehensible to the Empire's leaders. "All ships, regroup and prepare for defensive maneuvers," Zoreth barked. He could hear the panic beginning to rise in the ranks of his crew, but he had to remain calm. The fight was not over, and Earth was not yet defeated. For a brief moment, Zoreth found himself wondering whether the Empire had made a mistake. He had seen the human resolve up close. He had heard their words, their defiant calls for survival. He had seen them stand up to impossible odds time and time again. He thought about his own people, the creatures of the Empire. They had conquered countless worlds with ease, and yet here they were, struggling against an enemy that seemed to fight not just for survival, but for something far deeper: freedom. The Earth's plasma cannons fired again, cutting through the heart of the fleet. Ships exploded one after another. The situation had quickly spiraled out of control, and Zoreth knew that a simple victory would not be enough. This was no longer just about destroying Earth. It was about the Empire's pride. The consequences of defeat would be far more dangerous than any battle. "We can't afford to fail," Zoreth muttered under his breath. His voice was steady, but inside, he knew that this was a turning point. The balance of power was shifting. There was no denying it now. The Empire's grip on the galaxy was weakening in the face of human determination. "Shields failing, sir," Oryx shouted. "We've sustained too much damage to continue the offensive. We need to retreat." Zoreth's mind raced with options. He had only one choice now. He had to call for reinforcements. It was their only chance to win this fight. But even as the words formed in his mind, Zoreth couldn't help but wonder if the reinforcements would even make a difference. Would more ships change the outcome of this battle? The humans had already proven that they would stop at nothing to protect their world. The hum of the communication system interrupted his thoughts. The voice of the Galactic Fleet commander crackled over the comms. "Zoreth, the situation is worsening. We've sustained heavy losses. We need to pull back immediately, or we risk total destruction." Zoreth gritted his teeth. The last thing he wanted was to retreat in defeat. Yet, as the human forces pressed on with relentless fury, it became clear that their military was more than capable of holding their ground. The Empire's full might had been challenged, and Zoreth had no choice but to face the reality of the situation. "Prepare to signal reinforcements," Zoreth said, his voice cold with resolve. "But I want every last ship to hold its ground. We'll make our stand here." Oryx looked at him, his face filled with disbelief. "We're not retreating, even with the damage." Zoreth shook his head. "We'll fight until we can't fight anymore. There is no retreat in this mission. This will either be our greatest victory or our final defeat." As the fleet began to form up again, Zoreth could see the writing on the wall. This wasn't just a fight for Earth. This was a fight for the survival of the Galactic Empire. And now, it wasn't just about strength. It was about heart. Could the Empire overcome the will of the humans, or had the humans truly proven that their will to survive could not be broken? The battle for Earth was no longer about invasion. It was about survival. And the only question that remained was, who would stand victorious in the end? The Galactic Fleet was in disarray. Zoreth watched helplessly as more of his ships were destroyed by the relentless firepower of Earth's defenders. The once proud armada, a symbol of the Galactic Empire's might, now appeared as a struggling force barely holding on. He could feel the weight of the situation crushing him. They had underestimated the humans, and it was quickly becoming clear that the battle might not end in the Empire's favor. "Shields down to 30%, sir," Oryx reported from the communications panel, his voice strained. "The humans are relentless. Every time we take one of their ships down, 2 more take its place." Zorath clenched his fists, glaring at the battle unfolding across the vast expanse of space. Earth's plasma cannons were still firing, cutting through the enemy fleet like a knife through paper. Zorath had never seen anything like it. The humans were prepared for this fight. They had expected it, and they were ready. Each moment, each explosion, proved just how fierce their will to protect Earth truly was. His thoughts were interrupted by a transmission from one of the commanders on Earth's surface. The human's face appeared on the screen, his expression a mixture of anger and resolve. "We're not giving up, Zorath," the commander said, his voice filled with fire. "You came to conquer Earth, but you didn't realize that our strength is not in our weapons, but in our unity. You can destroy our cities, you can destroy our armies, but you cannot destroy our spirit." Zorath's throat tightened at the words. His fleet was crumbling, yet the humans remained unyielding. They had proven time and time again that they were more than just a species fighting for survival. They were fighting for their very existence. They weren't just protecting a planet. They were protecting everything they had ever known, everything they loved. They were fighting with a strength Zorath had never encountered before. "We do not wish to destroy you," Zorath said, his voice faltering for a moment. "You are brave, but your resistance is futile. We are the Empire of the Stars. We cannot be stopped." The human commander shook his head. "You're wrong, Zorath. We're not fighting you because we think we can't be stopped. We're fighting because we know what happens if we don't. We fight because we have something worth protecting, and we'll die before we let you take it from us." Zorath's breath caught in his chest. He had expected defiance. But this was something else entirely. These humans, so small compared to the vastness of the Empire, were willing to risk everything. It was madness, but it was also beautiful in its way. The human spirit, unyielding in the face of certain destruction, filled him with a strange sense of admiration and fear. "You don't understand," Zorath said, his voice quieter now. "You can't win. Not against us." The transmission ended abruptly. The words hung in the air like a warning, a final challenge. Zorath turned back to the battle. Earth's forces weren't backing down. In fact, they were pushing forward. Every inch of space was now contested. The once secure Empire ships were being picked off one by one, their massive hulls torn apart by the powerful human weapons. The flagship rocked violently again. A blast from the planet's surface had hit them squarely. Zorath's grip tightened on the armrests of his chair as the lights flickered, and the alarms blared throughout the command center. "Shields failing, sir," Oryx shouted over the noise. "We need to pull back immediately, or we'll be destroyed." Zorath hesitated. The option of retreat had never crossed his mind before. The Galactic Empire was invincible, or so they had believed. But here, in the midst of a battle for survival, Zorath understood something he hadn't before. It wasn't just about strength or numbers. It was about conviction, and the human's conviction was unlike anything he had ever seen. "We cannot retreat," Zorath said, his voice firm with resolve. "We fight until the end." The situation was desperate. The fleet was battered, the remaining ships scattered and losing ground. But Zorath refused to give in. He couldn't. The Empire had already suffered too much. His people were depending on him. If they retreated now, it would be a sign of weakness, a blow to their pride that they might never recover from. The humans, on the other hand, were gaining strength. Zorath could feel their presence growing, their unity as a species becoming more palpable with each passing moment. He had seen their leaders, people from all walks of life, standing together with a singular purpose. And it struck him. The humans had something that his empire had long lost. Hope. Hope in one another, in their future, and in the possibility that they could survive this. "Prepare the final assault," Zorath commanded, his voice cold. "We will break them." But as he spoke, Zorath couldn't shake the nagging thought that perhaps this was a battle he wasn't meant to win. There was something about humanity that had changed him, something that made him question his loyalty to the Empire. Suddenly, a voice rang out across the ship. "Sir, incoming transmission from Earth." Zorath raised an eyebrow, confused. Earth's transmissions had been cut off for hours. With a slight gesture, he activated the screen. The human commander's face appeared again, but this time, his expression was different. There was no anger, no defiance. There was only calm, unwavering determination. "You don't have to do this," the commander said softly. "This is not a war you can win, Zorath. You've seen the cost. You've seen the damage we're capable of. But this doesn't have to be the end." Zorath's heart pounded in his chest. What was the commander offering? A ceasefire? A truce? Could he even trust such a thing? "Why should I believe you?" Zorath asked, though a part of him, deep inside, already knew the answer. "Because we're not the enemy you think we are," the commander replied. "And we don't want to destroy you. We want to save you from yourselves." The words hit Zorath like a blow. The humans didn't see him as a conqueror. They didn't see him as an enemy. They saw him as a lost soul, as someone who had been misled by the Empire's false ideals. Zorath's mind raced. Could there be another way? Was there a path forward that didn't involve endless destruction? As his eyes locked with the commander's, something stirred deep within him. It was a feeling he had never experienced before, a sense of doubt. And for the first time, Zorath wasn't sure what he should do next. The battlefield outside Zorath's flagship was now a swirling chaos of fire and wreckage. The once pristine Galactic Armada, with its towering warships and advanced technology, was now reduced to a scattered, damaged fleet. Despite their superior weaponry, the human forces had proved to be far more formidable than the Empire had anticipated. And now, with the fleet in disarray and his flagship on the brink of destruction, Zorath found himself standing at a crossroads. The human commander's words echoed in his mind. "We don't want to destroy you. We want to save you from yourselves." Zorath felt a strange tension in his chest. He had been trained his entire life to believe in the supremacy of the Empire, to believe that the galaxy was theirs to conquer, that their rule was inevitable and just. He had seen countless worlds fall to their might, civilizations crushed under the weight of the Empire's power. It had always been simple. The strong conquered the weak, and they, the Empire, were the strongest of them all. But now, here with Earth in front of him, he was beginning to question everything. "Report," Zorath commanded, his voice low and weary, though still authoritative. Oryx, his loyal second-in-command, hesitated before responding, his face ashen with concern. "Sir, our fleet is severely compromised. Shields are at 15%. We've lost half our fighters, and more are being destroyed by their relentless assault. We can't continue the offensive much longer." Zorath stared at the tactical map, his eyes tracing the burning ships scattered across space. His own fleet was in tatters, but Earth's defenses, although intact, were still fully operational. The plasma cannons on the surface continued to fire, relentless in their defense, sending shockwaves through the Empire's ships. The humans weren't just fighting for their planet. They were fighting for something much more powerful: their freedom. Zorath looked down at his hands, clenched into fists. He had been taught to see them as enemies, weak, insignificant beings who were unworthy of their own planet. Yet, over the course of this battle, he had begun to see them in a new light. They had fought with a determination that had shaken him, something he hadn't expected from a species so primitive in comparison to the vastness of the Galactic Empire. He could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. The Empire had never known defeat on this scale. Never before had they faced a species that could stand against them so fiercely, so fearlessly. It made him feel small in ways he couldn't describe, and it was terrifying. A voice broke through his thoughts, snapping him back to the present. "Sir, the human commander is requesting a direct communication again." Zorath's brow furrowed. He had almost forgotten about the message that had shaken him earlier. Should he respond? What could he possibly say? His pride as a leader of the Galactic Empire, his unshakable belief in the Empire's superiority. It all felt like it was slipping away. "Put him through," Zorath said quietly, trying to steady his nerves. The human commander's face appeared once more on the screen. This time, there was no anger, no defiance, just calm, steady resolve. "We've lost too many, Zorath," the commander said, his voice soft but strong. "But we're still standing, and you have a choice to make. You can end this battle. You can turn your fleet around and leave. You've seen what we're capable of. We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for the future of our world." Zorath swallowed hard, his mouth dry. He could feel the weight of the decision in every word the commander spoke. The tension in his chest grew as the truth of the situation began to settle in. There would be no more fighting for glory, no more fighting for dominance. He had witnessed the unrelenting will of humanity. They weren't simply defending a planet. They were defending their right to exist. They weren't fighting for conquest or control. They were fighting for their future. And in some strange way, Zorath now understood that they had something worth protecting, something his empire had lost long ago. "This war isn't just about who's stronger," the human commander continued. "It's about who is willing to fight for what they believe in, and we will fight until the end." Zorath closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the full weight of the choice before him. He could give the order to continue the attack, push forward, and risk everything to claim victory, even though defeat was rapidly becoming inevitable. Or he could make a different decision. The hum of the ship's communication system buzzed in his ears, the voices of his officers, all awaiting his command. But Zorath knew that the decision was his to make, and his alone. He thought of the millions of beings he had led over the years, all those who had followed him unquestioningly, believing in the Empire's power. But he also thought of the countless worlds the Empire had conquered, worlds where entire civilizations had been destroyed in the name of progress, all in the name of strength. Zorath's hand shook as he reached toward the command panel. His mind raced, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure what the right choice was. But as the fires of war raged outside, something inside him began to shift. "Tell the fleet to stand down," Zorath said, his voice low and heavy with the weight of his decision. "We're leaving." There was a moment of stunned silence on the bridge. Oryx's face appeared to flicker with disbelief, but then it softened as he realized that Zorath had made his decision. "Are you sure, sir?" Oryx asked quietly. Zorath nodded slowly, the decision now irrevocable. "The humans. They've taught me something. They've taught me that strength isn't always about overpowering others. Sometimes true strength comes from knowing when to stop, when to choose a different path." The human commander's face appeared again, his expression filled with surprise, but also respect. "You're making the right choice, Zorath," he said. "This doesn't have to be the end of us. You can still walk away from this." Zorath's heart beat heavily in his chest, but there was a sense of relief that followed the decision. The Empire may never understand what he had done. They might consider him a traitor, a coward. But in this moment, Zorath knew he had chosen the only path that could lead to something greater. The battle had been lost, but perhaps a new future had just begun, one where Earth and the Galactic Empire could find a way to coexist. And with that, Zorath gave the order to retreat. The Galactic Armada turned away from Earth, and for the first time in his life, Zorath felt the weight of peace pressing against the heaviness of his past.